What is up, everybody? I hope you are having a fantastic evening. Hope your weekend was blessed. A long weekend for many of you. Not so much for me, but my kids had a long weekend and they enjoyed it. So hopefully you got to take advantage of the same. Maybe you work a government job or something. You got Monday off. Maybe you celebrate Valentine's Day with your special significant other. You took that day off. I don't know. Either way, I hope you are having a blessed day and had a blessed weekend. We're going to talk a little bit of mock draft. I put together a mock draft, tried multiple different websites to see what I could come up with. Also, I know that some of those mock draft websites, whether it's PFF or PFR, whatever it is that you use, usually they're a little bit off. Sometimes you're getting guys who are clear second round prospects in round 4, and it just doesn't make a lot of sense. You nail the draft and you feel good about it, but you know as well as I do, those players are not falling. So the mock draft I put together does have one trade in it, and it is very realistic as far as what I think where players could potentially go. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about the exclusive rights free agents that the 49ers are bringing back this next season and what that means. And then yeah, we'll just see what's going on in the chat and kind of go from there. So, that being said, we'll get to it right after this intro. All right. Welcome back to Last Second Sports. We are giving you our take down to the last second. Hope you're having a fantastic evening, everybody. I see some of you in the chat. What's up, Mash Sports? Went on his channel a few weeks ago. Really good young man. Like what he has going on over there. Go check him out. Show him some love. Mr. Laid Back, I see you. Mikey says, Jesse, after being on Twitter, I realized Niner media might be one of the worst medias I've stumbled upon. I think you might be right. I do. I think I've had a lot of conversations about the media, and I don't want to talk down on them because I think there are some good people over there. In fact, I'm sure all of them are really good people. But as far as like just doing their job, I think 49ers media is atrocious. I think it's awful. And I think that's why some people stand out like a sore thumb. I just feel like they ask terrible questions for the most part. I don't think any of them are super plugged in. I do think Matt Mayoko is pretty plugged in. Sometimes Tim Kawakami as well. But for the most part, I don't think those guys are super plugged in. I don't think they have inside sources with the team. And I don't think they ask good questions for the most part. I think they ask layup questions. I think they have the front office, their interests in mind, and put that above what fans really want to know or what we would really like to be asked. And it can be pretty frustrating. But that being said, I don't know how other teams' media groups are outside of a few. I know that Miami, for example, has some very similar characters where they just basically praise everything that Miami does. The Jets media, super tough. Giants media, super tough. So I don't know. Compared to some others, I could see where they're worse. Sometimes I can see where it's kind of even. But yeah, I tend to agree with overall though being unhappy with the media group as a whole for sure. And I think also the way the media group talks about the 49ers often puts people like me behind the 8 ball when I'm just being honest in my thoughts or my opinions about certain players or certain situations. And because people that are quote unquote plugged in have shilled for the team on whatever it is that has just happened, if I come in behind that, I'm negative and I'm the a-hole. So that's a little bit of a weird dynamic, but such is life, I guess. Such is life. Mr. Laid Back says, do you think the 49ers will trade this pick and Diva for Crosby or Garrett? First of all, I don't think Debo assuming you meant Debo. I don't think he really carries any value. I think adding him to any trade for Myles Garrett or Crosby, I don't think it moves the needle. My Sport says, I'm hoping your mock draft has safety Andrew Makuba. He's a dog. There's a lot of dogs in this draft that I like. It does not have Makuba, though. Spoiler alert. Laugh Out Loud Heyman says, we all appreciate your honesty in covering the team, Jess. Appreciate you, Heyman. All right, let's talk about the exclusive rights free agents that the 49ers did sign or tender or are planning on tendering at any rate. So, just so we understand how this works, you have exclusive rights free agents. These are players that were on your team to end the season that have accrued less than 3 seasons, 3 full seasons, and they are set to be free agents. So, some of these guys, they may have been drafted by the 49ers, they may have been picked up off of a practice squad. Some are a little bit older, some are younger. It just depends on how many seasons they've accrued in the NFL. So the list goes as such: Alex Barrett, Jalen Graham, my guy, Jalen Graham, Sam Okawanu. I think that's one of the more exciting names on this list. Jake Tonjes, Evan Anderson, Austin Pleasance, Mason Pline, and I put Evan Anderson on here twice because he's that important. So that's the list. We have Alex Barrett, Jalen Graham, Sam Okawanu, Jake Tonjes, Evan Anderson, Austin Pleasance, Mason Pline. That is the list of exclusive rights free agents the 49ers plan on bringing back. Now, a lot of this is just filling out the roster. You're getting a bunch of inexpensive players. A lot of these guys will end up on the practice squad, I'm sure. Hopefully, a couple of them can make it to the permanent 53, maybe even play in some games. I still have high hopes for Jalen Graham. I do think he's a good player, or has the potential to be a good player. I know Brother Bob disagrees with me on that one, but I like his potential. Sam Okawanu, I think, in a big way. I mean, when Coach and I went to training camp this year, he really, really stood out on multiple days, and we talked about him a lot. At that time, we didn't know how to pronounce his name, so we just called him Sammy O. It was much easier then, but I think he has a lot of potential as well. And then Evan Anderson, I think, did some good things. I think during training camp, Coach and I noted that he maybe was slightly out of shape. Not as like his weight came from bad weight more so than good weight. But I think as the season went along, that he actually started to shed some of that extra fat and build a little bit of muscle. Not that he'll ever be the most muscular guy or anything, but you don't want just a bunch of bad weight. And I think he started to kind of grow into his body a little bit, get some of that man muscle on him, and I think he showed that he can be pretty decent as well. So there are definitely some names on this list that I'm excited just to see how they grow. Maybe at the very least, a couple of these guys can be the ultimate depth pieces. Like I said, practice squad guys, what have you. But I do think that there are some players on this list that could potentially be something. So that is the news of the day. Those are the players that are going to get tendered by the 49ers, or so it sounds. Niner Gang says Okawanu and Anderson are the only two that are worth anything. Good depth. Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that. Sammy O. Sammy O. Yeah. I mean, maybe. It's not like they had great options at tight end. Papa says, what should they do about the wide receiver situation? The current wide receiver room isn't Super Bowl quality. I think this is really tough because, for a team that puts so many assets into that receiver room, it does seem like they are a little bit short potentially of where they need to be. Now, I do think a lot of that comes down to, what does Brandon Ayuk look like? First of all, when can he get back? And second of all, being back and being back to yourself are two completely different things sometimes. And I think he can come back pretty early. I don't know that he'll be back to himself at all next year, and that is a bit troublesome. But you've got Debo Samuel, who you poured a lot of assets into. Sounds like he's going to be gone. You drafted two receivers last year. Both of them showed promise at times, but you don't necessarily know for sure what they're going to be. Obviously, we know Brandon Ayuk, Jennings really stepped up in a big way last year. He's going into his a contract year for him as well. So I think that you're going to be able to get good play out of him. I don't know. I think I really can see a scenario where Devontae Adams ends up a 49er. Like if I was making a bold prediction on the big time free agents or guys that the 49ers might trade for, whether that's Crosby or Garrett, who else is out there? T. Higgins, whoever. I mean, whatever the list is. Devontae Adams is the one guy that I legitimately would almost be shocked if he wasn't on this team. Like, I think there's a really high chance that Devontae Adams ends up a 49er. He'll get like a 2-year, $27 million deal or something like that. And I really could see that scenario. Now, I don't know that that solves all the problems for the 49ers. Hopefully, they have a good amount of money left over so that they can continue to build this roster and they draft well. But there is a need at wide receiver. There definitely is. And that's why it didn't surprise me. In fact, I had predicted last year that they were going to take a receiver in the first two rounds. Now I thought they would take a receiver in round two. Ultimately, they went, pick 31 and brought in Ricky Pearsall, but it didn't surprise me at all that the 49ers picked a receiver last year. And they are in a situation where they do need a receiver still. Now, Devontae Adams is a very good player. Still, I think he's a very good player. I don't think there's a lot of risk with him aging out of his contract if you were to give him like a 2-year deal. But it's kind of what the 49ers have been doing, which is swinging and missing on players at certain positions and then having to make up for it through free agency. This would just be another name on that list. But Devontae Adams definitely could solve that problem. He really could. And you're not going to have to trade for him. You could just outright sign him. He's going to get cut by the Jets. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that one. I don't know that I would be super excited getting a player over 30 on a team that's already old and an expensive player at that on a team that's expensive. But I also wouldn't be that mad at it. I do like Devontae Adams, and I think he would be just fine on this team. I think, like, when I look at his style of play and how it matches up with Brock Purdy, I do think that that could be a really, really good pairing. And I think the other thing is that when you sign Brock Purdy to a big time contract, you need to do everything you can to make him look as good as possible. You have to. And I think Devontae Adams helps him look as good as possible. I really do. And I think that that's a smart move to solidify your investment to your fan base is go get him another really good weapon and allow him to just flourish with that weapon. And that type of weapon for the way that Brock Purdy plays football, I think is perfect. I think it's perfect for him. So I really would be I wouldn't be surprised. I would almost be more surprised if he didn't end up with the 49ers than did. I really think Devontae Adams is going to be a 49er, but we'll see. We'll see. Let's see. He is a true wide receiver one. Yeah. Yeah, maybe. I mean, you could be right. 2 years, 35. I don't know. I think 13 to 15 is fair at his age, but oh yeah, there is. In fact, we're going to go through it here in a minute. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I don't know that he's fully in need, but they could use wide receiver help. I don't know that it has to be Adams, but yeah, wide receiver is a need at this point. What's good? Our fan base wants established talent. Trade so bad rather than trading back and loading up plan. Maybe it's because the Niners don't trust their own talent evaluators much. Um, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know that the 49ers don't trust their talent evaluators. I think 49er fans don't necessarily trust the 49ers talent evaluators. But also, I think when you know a player is good, I I also think this all comes down to where you view the 49ers as being. I put out a video on Saturday, I think, Saturday or Sunday, I can't remember. Either way, I was talking about, the 49ers seem to have changed their tune potentially, at least outwardly through the media, as to where they are at. It seemed like a couple weeks ago, the 49ers were really through the media talking as if they were ready to win a Super Bowl and they just needed to go get one or two pieces and they're ready to go. But it seemed like they've backtracked on that a little bit. If you feel like this team is still a true Super Bowl contender, then going all in on a Miles Garrett or somebody like that makes a lot of sense. If you don't, which I am on this side of the house where I don't think they are that close, then I don't think going in all in on a Miles Garrett is. And I think building through the draft is the smart thing to do. And I think that the 49ers, I know we give them a lot of crap as far as the way they draft, but Sunil and I did an exercise last year around this time talking about how the 49ers draft. And they actually draft pretty well. I mean, they're not the best in the league, but they were like around 10th best over the 5 years that Shanahan's been here. They don't draft bad. We just look at all their misses. And because some of those misses are early misses, it makes it really, really hard to kind of justify their picks. But overall, the 49ers aren't an awful drafting team. The league doesn't draft well for the most part. There are some elite drafting teams, but the 49ers are above average as far as their drafting. So they hit big time last year. Can they do that again this year? We'll see. We'll see. But they are in a position where these young players have to contribute right away because they don't have the level of talent that they've had in the past where they can almost redshirt a whole draft class, maybe get one or two guys to contribute and then redshirt the rest. They're not there anymore. They have to have these guys come in and play well early if they're going to be contenders this year. I think for the long haul, they just need these guys to pan out and be pretty good ultimately. So yeah, for sure. Building the trenches. All right. I'm gonna be vulnerable here. I'm gonna give you my first mock draft of the year. You guys tell me what you think. Now, keep in mind, this is not you're not gonna see a lot of names. I don't think that this is gonna be a sexy draft for a lot of you based off of the names that you see when you mock, because I don't think that most of those mock drafts are realistic. I think way too often we have guys that are round two guys that you can mock draft to yourself in round four, round five, and it really makes a draft look sexy, but it's not realistic whatsoever. I think my draft is very realistic as far as where these players could fall. In fact, I almost on a couple of them maybe took them a little bit early just to make sure that it was realistic versus waiting an extra round and just letting them fall. So we'll see. I'll go over it with you. You tell me what you think. I do have a trade in here, though. I do have a trade in here, just one trade. And I think it's a trade that's a possibility. And shout out, I wish I remember who it was, but I did the call-in show last week, and somebody said, what do you think about trading back into the 20s? I was like, well, that would be great, but I don't know that many teams would want to get up there. And somebody suggested trading back with Denver because Denver might want Tyler Warren. Now, whether that's Denver or somebody else, I could see a team really wanting to move up for Warren. I know Brock Bowers was a hot commodity last year. Teams were talking about moving up. The Rams were talking about moving up for him. So if he's there at 11, and I really think there's a good chance that he is, I could see a team like Denver, who I ultimately do trade with in this mock draft, wanting to find that guy for their young quarterback. So let's get to it here. All right. So round one, here's the trade that I made. I trade pick 11 and 112 to the Broncos. You guys let me know if you can see that. Let me pull it up on my phone and see how it shows up. You might have to go go full screen here on your phone. Yeah, it shows up pretty good. That's not bad. Okay. Hopefully you can see it. Okay. So trading pick 11 and 112 to the Broncos for pick 20 and 51. And that would be so the Broncos could move up and select Warren. Now, Warren, again, does make a lot of sense because they have Bo Nix. You want to help out your young quarterback, give him some more weapons. You know, they could move up to 11 and take McMillan or somebody as well. But in this mock draft, that's kind of where I saw this going. So if the 49ers stay at 11, I really like Walter Nolan. However, another player that I've just really started to be like head over heels for in this draft is Jahdae Barron, defensive back out of Texas. And the reason that I like him so much, especially if you can move back, I think he's going to end up most likely on a team like the Ravens, the Bills, the Chiefs, some of those AFC teams that are kind of picking in the Steelers. I could see he's a really good fit there. Who else? The Chargers, I could see a fit. I mean, I could see a fit for a lot of these teams, but that's kind of where I see him in kind of the early to mid late-ish 20s, probably falling in there. And I don't think he makes it past that run of AFC teams that are kind of picking there. Jahdae Barron is, first of all, reminds me a ton of Brian Branch. Now, if you're familiar with Brian Branch's game, he was selected, I believe, round 2 last year by the Lions, if I'm not mistaken. Anyways, hell of a player. Hell of a player. He can play inside, he can play out, he can play safety. Brian Branch was the glue that held that team together on defense when they lost seemingly everybody. He was like the one consistent player on that team, was there week in and week out, and he was a difference maker. And that's what I see in Jahdae Barron. I think he really is that type of player. Now at Texas, he plays the star role. Jalen Petrie is another player who came out playing that role a few years ago. I had a lot of questions about him. I just didn't know what to expect because on film, he didn't play a lot of deep safety. And I thought he would be asked to do that in the NFL. So I was unsure. But as far as just a ball hawk goes, Jalen Petrie was that deal. Jahdae Barron is exactly that. He can be a nickel corner. He played outside a ton this year. He was asked to do that for the first time. He did that very well. He can play safety as well. I mean, he's a true jack of all trades. And when I look at this secondary who does need a corner and or a safety, I look at the versatility of this secondary. You have Renardo Green who can play inside or outside. You've got Deommodore Lenoir who can play inside or outside. He says as he ages, he wants to move to safety as well, which is pretty cool. And then you bring in somebody like a Jahdae Barron who can do it all as well. You've got players that when an injury inevitably happens and you bring in somebody off the bench, if they're strictly an outside corner, no problem. Any one of your corners you can move in or out. So you've got the versatility there to keep things going regardless of best player off the bench. What position does he play? So that's what I like about bringing in somebody like a Jahdae Barron. He plays much bigger than what his frame will tell you he is. He's very physical, amazing instincts, whether it be diagnosing plays or route recognition. And like I said, he reminds me of Brian Branch. So um, I would say if the 49ers were to draft him in my scenario at pick 20, first of all, I'd be ecstatic about it. I would prefer he doesn't play outside. He did that this last year and he did it very well. But I think if he's left on an island in man coverage, especially against a bigger body guy, that's not ideal. That wouldn't be ideal. So that's something that I don't know that he has to improve on. I just don't know that that would be the right thing to ask him to do at the next level. But he did it in college and he did pretty well. He did struggle once he got up against some of those bigger body guys because of his frame. But I don't know. To me, Barron would be an immediate impact player. Like I said, think think Brian Branch. And if you're familiar with Brian Branch's game, then you know exactly what type of player we're talking about here and just how good of a player that we are talking about as well. All right. Pick 43. Now, this is a player that very early on in the process, I think going into this year or throughout this college season, a lot of people had as a top 10 prospect, but he started to slide down draft boards. Now, it is very possible he goes towards the back end of round one, potentially. But it's also very possible that he lasts until like pick 55. Like, I think there's a wide range of possibilities for Princely. I think he's a really good player, a really good prospect, but he's not a complete prospect. And so that's why I could see a real scenario here where he's available at 43. Now, when I watched Walter Nolan definitely was a player that kept my eye on film, but Princely did flash from time to time, usually when lined up next to Walter Nolan. But Princely is a good player. He's got the perfect frame to be an edge rusher. He's 6'4", 255 pounds. I do think that he could put on a little bit of weight and his frame could hold it. I think that that would help him be a little bit better of a run defender as well, which I think that's an area of opportunity for him. But he's extremely explosive as a pass rusher. He disengages very well from a lineman in front of him in the run game. So it's not like he's not a good run defender because he can't get loose from the lineman in front of him. I just think if it comes to being a power type of guy in the run game, that's where he could use a little bit of extra weight. Now, if you know about Princely, he originally went to Florida, transferred to Ole Miss. They had a game against Florida this year where he did have an altercation with some of the fans. I don't think it's that big of a deal, but everything matters in the draft, right? Like every little thing matters. And if there's a quote unquote character concern, you could see a player drop a couple spots because of that. Now, this isn't a major character issue by any means. I don't think it's going to ruin his draft stock, but I could see a team or two being like, you know what? It's close between him and another guy. I'll just go here because that incident did happen or what have you. Also, I think I have read that some people think he's inconsistent on film as far as effort goes. I didn't necessarily see that, but I did only watch a couple games, so that could be a possibility. And if there's a couple people in the league that feel that way, I could see a situation where he slips as well. So, like I said, I really can see him go in the 20s, but I could see him going as late as possibly even 55. So, this I would say out of all the picks is the biggest chance of not being there, but I do think it is a very realistic possibility that he is there at pick 43. Now, remember, in this scenario, I have the 49ers trading pick 11 and 112 to the Broncos for 20 and 51. At pick 20, we took Jahdae Barron. At pick 51 now, the 49ers are going to get their second defensive lineman, this time at defensive tackle, and they're going to get Alfred Collins out of Texas. Now, Alfred Collins is a big boy, 6'5", 320 defensive tackle. He's got great length and strength, which is what I love about him. And he's got really, really good timing at batting down passes as well. Like if he doesn't get home, and this is a real skill set, some players have it, some don't, but he bats down a lot of passes, and he can do so because of his long frame, and he can disengage from offensive linemen, get his hand up, and bat down those passes. And then he also plays very violently. When he's setting blocks, it is something to behold. He is a violent player. Now, the thing with him, not the best pass rusher. He needs to improve his technique. He's not going to get home a ton. But for me, when I look at the 49ers and their needs, I'm looking to stop the run first and foremost. And there are two guys on this list that are defensive tackles that have been primarily run stoppers, but they're both improving as pass rushers. They've improved quite a bit in the last year as pass rushers. They're just not fully refined there yet. So Alfred Collins, to me, pick 51 from Texas. So far, we've gone defense, defense, defense. Robert Saleh would be very, very happy with this draft so far. Let me see what your guys' thoughts are. Got a couple super chats. Nick Talks Niners says, here's $1. Then he says, if the Niners can get Makuba to replace Huff. Yeah. Well, listen. Mash Sports brought up Makuba as well. I know that he's high on a lot of people's lists. So, good player. It just depends. Again, you can only draft so many guys here. You only have so many picks. And if Makuba's going to go pretty high, then, good luck with that. Yeah, this is exactly how I see Collins as well. All right, let's get back to it. All right, pick 75. 49ers get their left tackle of the future, Anthony Belton, 6'5", 345, left tackle out of NC State. First of all, he's probably going to need to sit a year, but this is okay. I'm totally okay with this. I think from a pure talent aspect, he's as talented as any tackle in this draft. I really believe that. And he's got the frame. Oh my gosh, he's got the frame to be a great left tackle. But sitting a year behind Trent Williams would do him wonders. It really would do him wonders. But I see a lot of traits in his game that will just translate extremely well to specifically the 49ers. First of all, I think he is a great scheme fit with his own blocking scheme. That's number one. But one of the things that excites me about him, and this is one of everybody's favorite things when they watch Trent Williams, is when he gets downhill and just starts mauling people like it's a video game. Anthony Belton has that to his game. He can maul people. He's extremely powerful. He's got good hands. He can anchor quickly. He is going to be an absolute beast, I believe, in the run game. And I think also if he's facing a power rusher, he's good. He's good to go. Where he needs refinement, though, is when it comes to the pure speed rushers. He can get beat to the edge against an elite speed rusher, and that's why I say this is a player who I think can be very good in this league. I would be ecstatic to have him at pick 75. But knowing that Trent Williams is there and you can sit him for a year and learn from Trent Williams and kind of refine his skills and get better when it comes to the pure speed pass rushers, I'm all for it. I think this could be the left tackle of the future. I would love Anthony Belton at pick 75. Now, what's interesting here is you saw we went defense, 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 including 2 defensive linemen. Now we're going to go offense, 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 including 3 offensive linemen back to back to back here. So, all right. Pick number 99. Now, Georgia has 2 guards that I think could go here that would be worthy of a pick here or early round 4, what have you. Now, the 49ers have a gap from 99 to 138 because of the trade that I made of 112. But because of that, you got to just take the guy that you really want. And the 49ers certainly need a guard. Now, Dylan Fairchild, 6'5", 315, played left guard at Georgia. That's an instant fit. He could be the left guard here day one. I do believe that. He was a 2-year starter at left guard. He's got great quickness, very good body control. He also has the ability to recover when he's beaten early. Like you'll see offensive linemen get beat early, and a lot of times, like that's just it. Play over, their guy's getting home. When he gets beat early, not that it didn't happen at all on film, because listen, none of these prospects are perfect, by the way. They all have something they could work on. But when he gets beaten early, he usually has the foot quickness and the ability to readjust his hands quick enough to where he doesn't get fully beaten immediately. Like he can recover well. He recovers very, very well because of his athleticism. He also plays with physicality. I think he's got a hit first mentality. So when I look at him side by side with Belton, I really think that could be a nice duo for many years to come. Now, where he needs to improve is on his readability against secondary pass rushers. We know this isn't going to sound great because this is what killed the 49ers in the Super Bowl against the Chiefs. It was those secondary guys that were either late blitzers or showed blitz late. And then, the 49ers didn't adjust right on the offensive line, allowing free rushers. I get all of that. And that is something that Dylan needs to improve on. However, for now, in this scenario, if he does start day one, he's playing next to Trent Williams. That is helpful. That is very helpful. And he's going to play next to a guy who I also believe can start day one that is like, this is his superpower at center, is identifying plays and getting guys lined up in the right spot. So I think for me, I would feel comfortable with him there. Although, again, none of these guys are perfect products. So he will need some refinement as well. But I do believe that he is good enough to potentially start day one. So Dylan Fairchild, Georgia, left guard. Now, round 4, pick 138. I'm going to take the center of the future and also a guy that I believe could start day one as well if it comes down to him and Brindell, and that's Jake Majors. He's 6'3", 315. He's out of Texas. He's given up 1 sack in his last 3 seasons. So you're talking about a guy from a big school playing other big-time schools. He's given up 1 sack in 3 seasons at the center position. That's absolutely incredible. And the biggest thing to his game that I just talked about, which is an issue for Dylan Fairchild, is for Jake Majors. That's the thing that he's best at. He's extremely cerebral. He identifies well pre-snap. That's what he was asked to do at Texas. And he gets players lined up in the right positions. He's extremely agile. He's solid in both run and pass blocking. Now, I think he's a better pass blocker than a run blocker, but he is also a bit undersized and he could use some strength in his lower body. There are times where he just gets outpowered when a nose tackle is right in front of him. A big body guy can outpower him from time to time. So that is an area of improvement. Again, we're talking about a 4th round potential prospect here. But I do think that he could be an upgrade day one at center. So now you've got the center, the left guard, and the left tackle of the future potentially back to back to back in this draft after you went defense, defense, defense. And we've now drafted 5 guys in a row in the trenches, whether that's offensive or defensive line. All right, now we know the 49ers are going to take a running back at some point in this draft. Kyle Shanahan is not getting out of this draft without taking a running back. You know it, and I know it, okay? That is going to happen. Which running back is it going to be? How long can he wait? That is the question. And I think there's a lot of good choices. I do. I went with Ollie Gordon, running back out of Oklahoma State. And the reason that I went with him is because he's different than what the 49ers have, in my opinion. He is more of a powerful runner. In fact, I look at him as like a Braylon Allen, Najee Harris type of player. And that is something the 49ers don't have. He is only 21 years old. That's another plus. We know with COVID years and what have you, a lot of these players, NIL deals, a lot of these players are coming out and they're older. Ollie Gordon is only 21. So I love that. In 2023, he was the Doak Walker Award winner. So we're talking about potential elite running back here, at least at the college level. He is a very good pass catcher as well. So he can do a little bit of both. He's a patient runner, which means I think he would work great in the zone blocking scheme. He's got very good contact balance. And the other thing is this, good ball security as well. I don't want a player that is just has fumbleitis, puts the ball all over the turf. That's not ideal. So we're talking about a guy who's used to be in the bell cow in college and did so at a very high level. And he can do a little bit of everything. Now, he's not the most explosive player. He's not a guy who's just going to break through the line and be gone. He will get caught from behind. And he also had a down year in 2024 for whatever reason. The whole team did, but he was a part of that. He played great in 2023, took a step back in 2024. If he'd played that well again in 2024, we're talking about a guy that probably goes in round 2. But he didn't. And that's where the 49ers can take advantage. I think Ollie Gordon, pick 139, round 4. I'd be very happy with that. And again, the 49ers are going to take a running back. It's just a matter of when. Kyle Shanahan needs him a running back. So expect that to happen at some point. All right, here's how we round out the draft. 49ers get their second defensive tackle. I do believe that they're going to need to come out of this draft with 2 defensive tackles. And they get their second defensive tackle here at pick 189. Cam Jackson, 6'6", 340 pounds, out of Florida. This player right here, right now, I believe that he'll be here. Round 6, pick 189. Do not be shocked if he starts moving up draft boards in a big way and pushes himself into maybe a late round 4 prospect. Do not be surprised by that. But at this moment, I think that Cam Jackson will be there. Shout out to Marco. He put me on Cam Jackson, and he's absolutely right. And when you watch him at the Senior Bowl, he's already refined his pass rushing moves a ton, which is scary to see. I mean, we're talking about a player who's learning very, very quickly. A guy his size to have the first step that he does is mind-boggling. Mind-boggling. He moves very, very fast. He's got high IQ. He plays with great effort. He showed major improvement in his pass rushing moves at the Senior Bowl. That was a big question. He is unrefined as a pass rusher for sure. And double teamed a lot in college. You talk about a guy who's 6'6", 340. You're going to face a lot of double teams. There were times where he got overwhelmed a little bit when getting double teamed. He got thrown off balance, couldn't hold his gaps, what have you. But a guy that size, if we put him next to an Alfred Collins, we're talking about 2 guys who are mammoths that can really hold down things in the run game. They're not going to be double teamed a ton, right? Obviously, anybody can get duo blocked depending on who you're playing, but I feel really good about this player in round 6, pick 189. Again, no prospect is perfect. Guys this late certainly are not that, but don't be surprised if Cam Jackson, with that frame that he has, with the athleticism, doesn't start moving up boards. But as of now, I mean, shoot, you can go when you go look up prospects and what people type up about them or say about them, there are legit websites that are seemingly have every prospect that don't even have Cam Jackson listed at all. Like he's not even on the list. And we're talking about, 10 pages, 100 plus defensive tackles. He's not even on the list somehow. I think that could potentially change very, very quickly as we approach the draft, but we'll see. He might be there. And as of now, I think that he would be there. If he was there and the 49ers took him, I would be so excited about this one. So Cam Jackson. Last couple picks here, round 7 picks. 49ers currently have 3 of them. Round 7, pick 228. 49ers do need a tight end. And this is a player that is raw, but he's an athlete. And he can grow into his 6'5" frame. Currently weighs around 235 pounds, but that's Bryson Nesbitt. 6'5", 235. He's very athletic, precise route runner, soft hands, a yak guy, which is fantastic. But he's built like a really big wide receiver, so he's not going to be the best blocker. And even though he's built like a big wide receiver, he's got some tight hips. So he's, think DK Metcalf at wide receiver. I don't know that he the routes he runs are very precise, but I don't know that he can run every route to perfection, right? But what he is asked to run, he's very clean in and out of those breaks. But you can see that he's not the most fluid mover at times as well. So take that for what it's worth. Again, we're talking about a 7th round guy, but he could be the next Isaiah Likely. You never know. And I'm willing to take the flyer. At this point in round 7, you're taking flyers. Bryson Nesbitt's a guy that if he's there in round 7, I would love to take a flyer on. And I think the 49ers certainly do need another tight end. Why not Bryson Nesbitt? All right. Round 7, pick 232. Dante Trader Jr. out of Maryland. Currently projected to be potentially a UDFA. These next 2 guys actually both could be UDFAs. But you're also, like I said, taking flyers. Hell, Brock Purdy was supposed to be a UDFA. We know how that turned out. So if there's a guy you like and you don't want him to hit the open market as a UDFA and you're not confident you can bring him in, then draft him. Draft him in the 7th round. And this is a player that, listen, he may be nothing in the league. But if he was a starter eventually, I wouldn't be shocked. 5'11", 196, safety out of Maryland. Going back to all the other players in the secondary, versatility. That's what I love about Dante Trader. He can play in the slot and he can play single high. He's a good tackler, especially when I say 5'11", 196. You may think like, oh man, I don't know. He's a very willing tackler, good tackler. His teammates describe him as a film junkie. So that's very good. You're talking about a guy who literally lives in the film room as it's described. I'll take that, especially in round 7. And let's just see what you can get out of it. He's definitely a tweener size-wise, which can be tough because you're also talking about a guy in round 7. So if you ask him to play in the slot, he's either going to face large tight ends potentially or shifty wide receivers. And I could see a scenario where both, because of his size and, he's not the best athlete as far as a round 7 guy goes. If he's in a man situation, in those situations, it could be problems. It could be. But 49ers do play a lot of zone, and you're talking about a guy who can tackle, who's extremely smart, and can play zone very well and even be a single high safety. I'll take my chances. So Dante Trader Jr. out of Maryland, safety. And then my last pick here, it's just this is simply just the 49ers could use another linebacker. And I think at this slot, he's probably the best available. We'll see if he turns into anything. But Kareem Reed, 6 foot, 226, linebacker out of Utah. Much like Dante Trader, he diagnoses plays very well. He gets downhill quick in the run game. He's a reliable tackler. And I think at this stage, when you're drafting guys in round 7, if they're willing and reliable tacklers like Dante Trader and Kareem Reed are, I'll take that. Also, does very well in zone coverage, diagnoses zone very well. Once again, not the biggest guy, and he's not the fastest guy either, right? So you put him in man, I don't know if that's where you want him to be. Both him and Dante, you put him in man, I don't know that that's ideal. You let him diagnose plays, you let him come downhill, you let him make tackles near the line of scrimmage, you let him play zone coverage. I think they both can thrive in that. But you put them in man situations, not ideal. And that's why they're 7th round picks. So for me, that's the first mock draft I put together. Took a lot of time on this one, pouring through mocks, watching film, reading about guys. Is it perfect? No. No. But do I feel comfortable with it at this point? Would I be happy at this point if this was the draft the 49ers had? Hell yeah, I would be. Hell yeah, I would be. Nick Talk Niners, appreciate you, brother. Becoming a member. That's the other thing. I think Dante Trader and Kareem Reed could be special teamers right off the get and be good special teamers right off the get. And that's a great point by you because when you're drafting late, that's another thing you're looking for. I think both those guys could be special teamers immediately. Immediately. So well, listen, if I got the approval of Tommy Huxley, then that's awesome. We'll take it. What's up, man? Oh, Jalen Conyers. Okay. Okay. I did do an actual mock draft as well, just to make sure that like again, when you go to like some of these mock draft websites, T-Dub, a lot of these guys, like you can put together a much better mock draft than this, but a lot of those guys are like second round prospects that are there in round 4. It's like, well, yeah, of course, I would love to have that guy, but it's not realistic. I did do a mock draft on PFF just to make sure that these guys all fell to me, just as like a baseline. Once I had put it together on paper, and then I was like, all right, let me make sure that like because if PFF doesn't have these guys falling to you, then some of these guys will fall much further than they actually will in real life. So that would be a little worrisome. And all these guys were available where I was drafting. So just as that baseline, I was able to pull that off as well. I've got a picture of it somewhere. So I was able to pull the mock draft off as well where they were all there. But yeah, this is just one that I put together based off of, again, if I'll give you an example because I did mock drafted on PFF as well. Like I said, to make sure they were there. But let me give you the scores they gave me for this mock draft. So they gave me a C minus, Jade Barron. They gave me an A for Princely. They gave me a C for Alfred Collins. They gave me a B for Belton. They gave me an F for Fairchild, Majors, and Gordon. They gave me a D plus for Cameron Jackson, a C minus for Nesbitt, and a C plus for Dante Trader, and a C for Kareem Reed. So the reason that I got Fs here is because like Dylan Fairchild, they have is ranked as like their 200 something prospect. He's not going to go that far. It's just not going to happen. Same with Jake Majors, and then I forget where they have Ollie Gordon going, but that's why, to me, yes, if I were to do a mock pick 99, there's going to be some way sexier names than Dylan Fairchild there. I don't know how many of those are actually realistic. Yes, sir, brother. Yes, sir. Make sure you send me the link. I assume you use StreamYard. So I'm going on Nick's show tomorrow. In fact, doing 4-man front over on Ryan's channel at 7:45 p.m. Pacific. No, 7:45 p.m. Eastern and 4:45 Pacific time. So, and then after that, I'm going on to Nick Talk Niners and his show. So looking forward to it. Make sure you just send me the link, brother. DM it to me. Jesse, I feel we got to go defensive tackle Walter Nolan in the first. Yeah, listen, if they stay at pick 11, Walter Nolan is my pick. Walter Nolan's my pick. And so I do have to do another mock with no trades because trades it's tough. And that's why I would trade a million times to get more picks, but it's just not realistic. That's why I have the one trade in this one with Jahdae Barron, picking up another second round pick. I do think it is a realistic possibility, but also you never know. You never know. So I do have to do another one for sure where there are no trades. And Walter Nolan will be my pick at 11 in that scenario for sure. Appreciate you, Salty. Uncle Salty. Peace. Oh, okay. So it's fine, but he doesn't love it. All right. You know what? From you, Tommy, that's like a 9. That's like a 9. If you give it a 5, a, a Tommy 5 is somebody else's 9. You know, it's like a California 5 is a Minnesota 10. You know, people say that. A Tommy 5 is a 9 for somebody else. So I'll take it. Coach says you don't want to draft a lineman where you are about to spend $60 million on the quarterback. That is going to need a new kind of help. Go get 3 free agent all linemen back to back to back before any other positions on offense. Yeah, it's tough because there's only so many good offensive linemen that hit free agency. Usually, if an offensive lineman hits free agency, they're not the best. Like they've been in the league, somebody else is deemed they're okay or what have you, but they're willing to let them walk. Usually, elite offensive linemen don't hit the open market. They just don't. So I hear what you're saying for sure, but I just don't think that those guys are going to exist. Yeah, I appreciate it, Nick. That was kind of my thing. How do you do both? I feel like they've got to fix both at this point. You got to fix both. And I was able to get a future left tackle, a day one starting guard, a day one starting center in my mind, and then 2 defensive tackles and an edge rusher. Like, yes. And whether it's the names or not, that is really irrelevant. If the 49ers were to draft like this position wise, I would be so happy with it. I would think most of you would be happy with the positions I came away with. Whether you like the players or not, that's kind of beside the point, but just the positions. If the 49ers came away with 3 defensive linemen and 3 offensive linemen in this draft, I think most of you would be pretty damn happy with this. Paul says, "Hey Jesse, why are you 49er fans so delusional? Thinking that brought AKA Brock Purdy can win a Super Bowl. Why are 49er fans so delusional? I don't think they're delusional necessarily, Paul, and thinking that he can win a Super Bowl. Listen, predicting him to win a Super Bowl is different than thinking he can. They got to a Super Bowl. They were this close to winning it. Brock can win a Super Bowl. Can win a Super Bowl. And if everything is perfect around him, he can. I don't think he was the reason they lost. I think he was pretty far down the list. Now, he didn't win it, and the opportunities were there for him to win it, but that's okay. So thinking he can versus thinking he will, two different things. If I'm making a prediction of will he? No. No, I don't believe so. But can he? Hell yeah, he can. Hell yeah, he can. This is tough, Jeff. I think skill wise, yes, but I don't know how well he would make that move over to right tackle, right? I don't know. I don't know. Going left to right or right to left can be tough for some players. That's why I took that's why I really like Dylan Fairchild. He played left guard at Georgia. And I would ask him, or the 49ers would ask him to be their left guard. So I think it's a good fit. And I know he can play that position. If he was a right guard and I'm asking him to play left guard, I don't know. I don't know if he can make that move. So, but from a talent perspective, yes, I think he could. I think he could. I also, here's the other thing though, Paul. Like for me, the way that I'm looking at this is I know what the 49ers are and what they are not, what they're going to do versus what they're not going to do. Like we have a good thought of what they think about themselves and what they're likely to do. So when I come up with these scenarios, I'm not saying that this is what I would do if I was running the team fully. But what do I think the 49ers are going to do? Well, I think they're going to extend Brock Purdy and give him a massive deal. So now my job is when I talk about the team, not to dwell on the fact that I wouldn't do that. Everybody knows that. But how do I build a team around him to get the best out of him? Again, the job now is they're going to sign him. Okay, cool. How do you make him look his best? That's why I think Devontae Adams could very well end up a 49er because he will make your investment into Brock Purdy look good. Like he's going to help it look good early on. And if you draft this way, where you go and get 3 offensive linemen in the draft and you do it all within the first 4 rounds, you're getting some potentially high level players here. And that's going to help him look the best that he can look. So that's the job now is not to debate whether he's going to be here or should be here. We know he's going to be here. We know that I don't think that he should be paid to be here at that level, but that's beside the point. So now the focus has to shift to how can I get the best out of this team with Brock Purdy at the quarterback position for the foreseeable future. And so that's every conversation I have is centered around that. Because to your point, the quarterback position is the most important position in football. It is. Now, it's not the only position and it's not the end all be all, but it is the most important position. So everything I do is here to support the quarterback. And that's what I'm looking to do. If that means that we prop up Brock and make him potentially look better than what he actually is because we surround him with so much talent, hell yeah, I'll take that because that means the 49ers are contenders and potentially could win a Super Bowl. That's all I care about. Like, I don't, just because I don't personally think signing him to a big time contract is the right move, I'm not putting my thought process or my feelings on that in front of what I ultimately hope happens, which is the 49ers win a Super Bowl. And if that means they win a Super Bowl in the next couple of years because they've built a good team and Brock Purdy's their quarterback, I'm taking that. And I'm trying to build a Super Bowl contender through my thought process with Brock Purdy at the helm. So that's where I'm at with it. That's the ideal thought. He says, but Jesse, do you remember when we first met, when I came on the live show and I called Jimmy Garoppolo, Jimmy Garoppolo can't throw yet? That was a great name. And I mentioned how Brock would not be able to do. Yes, I do remember. You listen, you're very consistent. And by the way, I'm very consistent with you. I think we agree for the most part. It's just I'm at a position, and we should be at a position as a fan base knowing this, regardless of what our thoughts are, the 49ers are going to do something different, which means we just got to switch our thinking. Like, how do we continue to win around that? So, come on, man. He's the greatest one since Slice Montana. Slice Montana? I don't know. Are you saying he's the greatest quarterback we've had since Joe Montana? I think that's what you're meaning. I don't know. I think that's debatable. But this is like the same argument that Dolphins fans make. It's like, well, Tua is the best quarterback we've had since Dan Marino. Okay. True. That is true. Also, Tua is not an elite quarterback. Also true. Like, you paint the picture with a very true statement potentially, but that doesn't mean that you've got the true elite franchise player either. Like, both things can be true. Tommy, just let him be negative. Some people just love to argue with anything, bro. Yeah. 187. I agree with this. Listen, there are limits, right? And I remember, Dan Mitchell, 187. But for those of you that don't, he covers the Buffalo Bills, and he also is one of the co-founders of Roundtable Sports, which is the show that I go on Tuesdays, and we have the NFC West Roundtable. At any rate, I was in the chat one time it was like week 10 or something like that. And he's like, hey, Jesse's in here. And, I know what you think of Purdy. You put him on the same level as Tua. And I was like, no, not true at all. My limit is Tua. The moment you start putting Tua in the same conversation with Purdy, I'm out. Like, I am out. I am not at all a Tua guy at all. Now, I don't think Tua is bad by any means. I think Tua is like maybe the 15th best quarterback in the league, 17th best quarterback, something like that. He's not awful, but he's not as good as Purdy. He's just not. And I won't listen to anybody saying that he is. I'm not going to listen to that argument. I'm all out on Tua. Slick Niner says, Jesse, do you feel that the offense makes average quarterbacks look elite, i.e. Jimmy Garoppolo? How would Fields or Wilson look in this offense? First of all, I think Fields would make Kyle Shanahan want to pull his hair out for the same reasons that Trey probably did, for the same reasons that Jalen Hurts would, in my opinion. Kyle Shanahan wants his quarterbacks to play on time and be accurate. Justin Fields, here, I'm going to switch this up. Justin Fields, it is neither. consistently anyways. He can play on time. He can be accurate, but snap in and snap out, he's neither of those things. So I don't think Fields would be a great backup option here. Wilson, I assume you mean Zach Wilson. Listen, I was not a Zach Wilson guy coming out of the draft. I called him a professional dunker, meaning he can make all the wow throws, but I felt like when it came to playing the game of basketball, dribbling a ball, what have you, that was not his game. And I think that showed early on in his career. That being said, he was put into a really bad situation and he had a year to sit and learn behind Bo Nix and be coached by a coach who I think is very similar to Kyle Shanahan and Sean Payton as far as like what he demands, what he expects, and how he can kind of be like a hard ass a little bit. So I think that helps him if he were to come be the backup here. And I do. I think that I don't know what that level is, by the way. I don't know that Zach Wilson will ever be any good. But I think this system would get the best out of Zach Wilson, whatever that is. Maybe that's the 20th best quarterback in the league. Maybe that's the 8th best quarterback in the league. Maybe that's the 50th best quarterback. Whatever that ceiling is for him, that would be brought out of him. So, yeah, I do think this system with the right quarterback does get the best out of those players, but not every quarterback. Russell Wilson would look awful here. Justin Fields, I don't think would do well here. Jalen Hurts would look worse in this system. I think there's a lot of quarterbacks that would look worse in this system. I do. But for the quarterbacks that play the way that Wilson was prospected to be, I think it would get the best out of him. I do. Yeah. Whatever that is. I'm not sure what that is necessarily. Green 19 Hut. Justin Fields and Jalen Hurts couldn't play here, but Zach Wilson can. Yeah. Listen, I'm not saying that Zach Wilson's a better player than them. That's not what I'm saying. Like, listen closely to what I'm telling you. By the way, I'm not saying Jalen Hurts or Justin Fields couldn't play here. I don't think this system with Kyle Shanahan gets the best out of those players. I think Kyle Shanahan would pull his hair out coaching either one of them. I don't think Jalen Hurts would be the Jalen Hurts that he is today if Kyle Shanahan had drafted him in round 2. I don't think that would have ever came to fruition. I don't think he would have the patience for him at all. He's not the style of player that Kyle Shanahan prefers to coach at the quarterback position. He wants guys that are going to hit their back foot and let go of the ball. And if they don't let go of the ball, he wants them to hitch up, move to read 2, hitch up, move to read 3, and get rid of the ball within those 2 hitches. So back foot, 2 hitches. He wants the ball gone, and he wants those hitches to match up. He wants the footwork to match up with the reads. Jalen Hurts, who just won Super Bowl MVP and is showing he's a very effective player in this league, clutch as well, would not be at his best for Kyle Shanahan in this system. He just wouldn't. That is not his game. When you think Jalen Hurts, you don't think hits back foot, gets rid of football. Hitches up, gets rid of foot. That's not his game at all. You think of RPO, run, hit a deep ball down the sideline. You don't think plays over the middle of the field, on time and accurate. That's not his game. That doesn't mean he's a bad quarterback or he's not way better than Zach Wilson. That's not what I'm saying. But for this team, this coach, in this system, it would not get the best out of Jalen Hurts or Justin Fields, in my opinion. It would get the best out of Zach Wilson. Now, also what can be true here is Jalen Hurts at his worst might be the 25th best quarterback in the league in this system. If this system got the worst out of Jalen Hurts, maybe that's the 25th best quarterback. And if it gets the best out of Zach Wilson, maybe that's the 40th best quarterback. Right. And so Jalen Hurts could still be better than Zach Wilson. I'm not saying Zach Wilson is necessarily better than either one of them, especially Jalen Hurts, who's proven himself. But in this system, Kyle Shanahan would pull his freaking hair out coaching either one of those guys. He just would. And anybody who knows this team and knows Kyle Shanahan knows that's a very accurate statement. Give us your top 10 quarterbacks right now, Naylor. Based off of top 10 quarterbacks are so hard because, like I said, this list shifts and changes game to game, week to week. My top 10 quarterbacks going into next season based solely off of this last season. See, I can't base it solely off this last season. I have to do body of work as well. So everything that we know about these players. Okay. I would go Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, Matthew Stafford, Justin Herbert. Is that 6? Man, this is tough. Because there's also a preference here too of like what style. We're talking about Jalen Hurts, for example. All right. Jalen Hurts. See, but I personally, I wouldn't take Jalen Hurts. Like I prefer Brock Purdy over Jalen Hurts as far as like what style of quarterback I would like to run my team. But Jalen Hurts is proven he's there. It's like Jay-Z. Like I'm not a fan of Jay-Z. I don't bump Jay-Z. I don't like Jay-Z. I've never liked Jay-Z. But if I'm making a list of top 10 rappers, I'm putting Jay-Z in there. So, all right. Jalen Hurts, 7. Um, Jaden Daniels, 8. CJ Stroud, 9. Brock Purdy, 10. Maybe Jared Goff, 10. Brock Purdy, 11. I'll go Goff, 10. Brock, 11. Goff, 10. Brock, 11. And then, I don't know after that. I don't know after that. I think you could go maybe Love or Dak or I don't know. After that it gets squirrely. I feel pretty confident in my top 11. I think you could argue Brock anywhere from 8 to 14. I'll listen to an argument 8 to 14. I would personally put him at 11 right now, though. Going into next season, I'd put him at 11. So, off the top of my head, that's the list. There we go. Dave says top best 5 rappers: Dylon, Dylon, and Dylon. Think about it, because I spit the hot fire, man. That that whole skit is so funny to me because he says it. He says Dylon, 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 and Dylon. And then he says, think about it. As if you took the time to think about it, you'd be like, yeah, he's got a point. He does have a point. I didn't think he had a point until I thought about it. And then I realized he does, in fact, have a point. There you go. Because I spit hot fire. All right. T-Dub says Mahomes, Allen, Lamar, Burrow, Stafford. Okay. We agree on the top 5. Daniels, Purdy, Herbert, Mayfield. Oh, yeah. Mayfield. I forgot about Baker. Baker would be I might put Baker at 11 and Brock at 12. Either or. Either or. Either. That's why I said 8 to 14. 7 I think is way too high. 7's too high for Purdy. It just is, in my opinion. But 8, you put him at 8, I'll listen to it. I'm not good job on Mayfield, though. I completely spaced on Mayfield, and he's played really good the last couple of years. He deserves to be in the conversation as well. For sure. He does. He's had 2 really good seasons back to back. I think the issue with Purdy is again, Hurts. The fact that you don't have Hurts in here is kind of crazy, actually. Now that I'm looking at this, again, Hurts' style of play, I agree. If in a vacuum, the type of football that my team would play, Purdy's skill set fits better than Jalen Hurts' skill set. It does. But to not have Hurts in your top 10 at this point is, I mean, I don't know how you can justify that. Because you're talking about a player that, regardless of what you think about him, plays his best football in the game's biggest moments. Period. Plays his best football in the game's biggest moments. When he gets to the Super Bowl, he plays arguably the best he has played in 2 seasons. When he went to the Super Bowl the first time, that was, I think, his second best game statistically of the whole season. The whole season. We're talking 19 games played or 20 games played. The Super Bowl was his second best game of that season. And then when you look at this year, the Super Bowl was maybe his second best game, but possibly his best game of the whole year. So when the game is biggest, he plays his best. I mean, he deserves credit for that. Period. And what, 9 playoff games, I think. I don't remember how many. Maybe he's at 10 now. Whatever it is. He's at 20 total touchdowns and 4 total turnovers in his playoff games. I mean, you've got a 5-to-1 touchdown to turnover ratio in the playoffs. I mean, say what you want about him, but I think once you're past the elite players, your 5 to 7 players, whatever that list is, and it fluctuates year to year, you're talking about all those guys from there on needing to be helped a ton. Maybe after the first 4, to be real with you. I don't know. But so he definitely needs the help. But to not have him in your top 10 is all you're saying at that point is that You just don't like his style of play. Like that's the only leg you have to stand on. Because if you're comparing him to Purdy, for example, uh, what has Purdy done that he hasn't, other than play a game in a style that you prefer? Purdy hasn't done anything in the playoffs that he hasn't done, or he hasn't done better. Purdy hasn't done anything in the regular season that he hasn't done. I mean, technically, yeah, there might be a metric Purdy's hit that he hasn't, but I can say the same thing about him when it comes to Purdy. Right? Purdy hasn't been more consistent of a player than he has. So, like, it really, again, my preference in a vacuum would be the style that Purdy plays the game. But to just flat out say that Hurts isn't a top 10 quarterback, it's a style preference. That's the only thing that you can say, which is fine, but he deserves to be there. He just does. Yeah, but I mean, does Purdy's arm wow you? F no, it doesn't. Certainly doesn't. For sure. And this I agree with. I understand what you're saying. I totally understand what you're saying. Purdy's arm wows you in the short. All right. Well, I don't listen. If you like Purdy and that's definitely where he excels, cool. But to say his arm wows you, come on, man. There's no way his arm wows you. For sure. It doesn't. That's your favorite saying. And Jalen Hurts effing produces. Cryptic says with Derrick Henry at 1,800 yards, Barkley at 2K, CMC 2K total yards the year prior, are they changing the way we look at running back? The way that Hurts is changing quarterback. I don't know that they're changing the way we look at running back. You know what's crazy though is growing up, and I don't know how old you are, Cryptic, but anybody who's like my age that watched football in the 90s, teams needed elite running backs for the most part to be elite teams. Like Dallas Cowboys had an elite running back. They won a lot of Super Bowls. Um, the Buffalo Bills were in the Super Bowl every year. Elite running back. Elite running back was like a prerequisite to being a good team or really good running backs. Your team needed to have a really good running back to even be considered a contender for the most part. And then somewhere along the lines, that dissipated for sure. But now we're starting to see the hate's gone too far on the position. And so now you're getting these elite players at a really reasonable price, and they are definitely changing the game for some of these teams for sure. So I don't know that it's quote unquote changing it. Like maybe it's changing it from the way that we looked at it a couple years ago. But as far as the traditional running back position in the NFL, I think those who grow up watching football in the 90s, early 2000s will tell you this is kind of what football's always looked like to them. So, but yeah, man, it's yeah, it is what it is. Mm, no. They were not. That's not true. That's not true. Listen, I know what Spagnuolo said. The bottom line is they game plan to stop CMC. And when you heard players on that defense talk about that game plan, they told you the truth. The truth was stop CMC at all costs, make them beat us through the quarterback. That is literally what those players said in the postgame. I know Spag said a lot of really nice things. And by the way, this is the same for Hurts. I just said that Hurts is a top 10 quarterback. And after what he's done, you can't take that away from him. But it's the same thing for Hurts. They definitely game plan to take away Saquon Barkley and make Hurts beat him. Unfortunately for them, they couldn't put up points, and Hurts did beat them. Like, Hurts was putting up points, so it backfired. And Purdy was this close to also being the reason that they lost that game. If that free blitzer comes through and Purdy recognizes it and fills McDuffie's spot, and instead of throwing to the outside receiver and Jennings, just simply throws to the open spot, which happened to be Brandon Ayuk, the 49ers win that game. They win the game. Literally one play away from winning that game. I'm not talking about when Brandon Ayuk was wide open in the end zone and it was on the backside of the play. That's not what I'm saying. I'm talking about legitimately, he's looking left. He throws to Jennings, who's on the outside, and Ayuk is in the slot and wide open because that was McDuffie's spot where he blitzed. If Purdy just makes that one extra throw, they win the game. And their game plan of shutting down CMC and making Purdy beat them backfires right then and there. The same way that shutting down Barkley and making Hurts on offense beat them backfired. It just would have. But don't get it twisted. Their game plan was not to come in and stop Brock Purdy. Their game plan was to stop CMC. You have to choose. They were choosing to stop CMC and make Brock Purdy beat them. And that is what those defensive players said in their post-game pressers. So Spags can say all the nice things he wants, but when they took their 2 weeks to game plan, their game plan was to stop CMC. It just was. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. That is not to take away from Brock or Jalen Hurts. But Brock was not better than CMC, and Jalen was not better than Saquon, even if they were top 10 at their position, because those guys were number 1 at their position for that single season. So, for sure, he did do nothing, just in the same way that Saquon did nothing. Saquon did less of nothing. He had less rushing yards than CMC did. Now, CMC fumbled, but Saquon did less than CMC. And Jalen had to adjust and go win the game. So, them's the breaks. All right, y'all, listen. 456 of you watching. Appreciate you. Now up to 457 between Twitter and YouTube. Appreciate you. I do have to let you know about my friends over at Underdog. They've been sponsoring the channel all year long. They've been an awesome sponsor. Just because the NFL season is over does not mean that your fun and having a little skin in the game has to end. You definitely can go make your more or less picks on the NBA, golf, hockey, baseball's coming up, whatever that is. Those picks are available. If you sign up using my promo code LSS or the link in the description, you'll still get a deposit match of up to $1,000, 50% deposit match of up to $1,000. So check that out. And they're always offering crazy stuff, free plays, what have you. So definitely give them some love. Showing our sponsors love is showing love to the channel as well. Appreciate you for that. Appreciate you all for tuning in. I am out of here. I'll be back tomorrow night on Ryan's channel. It's going to be myself, Coach, Grant, and Ryan. We're going to be talking not 49ers, which will be great for a change. We have some pretty interesting topics that we're going to be going over. Some sports related, some not. So definitely check that out. And yeah, I'll be back as soon as possible. Talk to you later. Much love. Peace.